Suddenly he jumped up. He remembered she hadn't eaten anything. How could he have forgotten? He immediately went to her room and knocked on the door, regretting that he hadn't taken her out for dinner before bringing her to the hotel. Ji-won had just finished showering and, hearing the knock, rushed to open the door. She asked if he needed something. He calmly inquired if she had eaten dinner and if she wanted something to eat. He then asked what she usually liked. Ji-won thought of pork soup sprinkled with sesame, with green onions and pickled radish. It sounded delicious. Just then, a butterfly landed on her head. Ji-won panicked and screamed, startling Ji-won. She pointed to her head, explaining that she was terrified of insects. He offered to catch it for her and warned her to be careful. In the panic, Ji-won stumbled. She grabbed Jin-hook's tie to steady herself but lost her balance, falling backward and accidentally hitting the light switch. The room plunged into darkness. Once again, the distance between Jin-hook and Ji-won was small. They stood close, hearts pounding, and gazed at each other in the silent room. The clock struck 2 a.m. Ji-won lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. She kept thinking about that moment with Jin-hook, feeling embarrassed and pulling the blanket over her head. If only things were different. If only Parkman Han hadn't caused her so much trouble. Perhaps she could have opened her heart to Jin-hook by now. In his room, Jin-hook felt the same as Ji-won. The memory of them falling into each other's arms haunted him. He couldn't sleep. Her image flashing through his mind, making it impossible to forget. Two people in separate rooms, yet their feelings were eerily similar. They longed for each other, their hearts racing. Who knows how long the night dragged on? Ji-won, now exhausted, yawned repeatedly as morning approached. Jin-hook called her, inviting her to breakfast. How was he not tired? He went to fetch some food and brought it back to Ji-won. Sitting down, he casually remarked, "A boyfriend should fetch food for his girlfriend, right?" Ji-won panicked, quickly clarifying that what he did yesterday was just a favor. Jin-hook grinned, reminding her that she'd asked him to pretend to be her boyfriend, but never mentioned how long that act should last. Flustered, she stammered, and he smiled, wishing her a good meal. As he smiled, she blurted out, "You look just like a puppy when you smile." Jin-hook's face went pale. What was she talking about? Ji-won hastily explained that she meant a Labrador retriever, a big, cute dog. She rambled on about how Labradors are adorable, smart and obedient. Mid-sentence, she clamped her hands over her mouth, embarrassed by her own words. Ji-hook raised an eyebrow, teasing her. "So, you think I'm cute?" Changing the topic, he asked if she had chosen an apartment yet. Ji-won mentioned that she'd be moving into the one Hyene recommended, the same one Hyene had lived in previously. After breakfast, Hyene took Ji-won to see the apartment. Ji-won thought it was perfect and apologized for troubling Hyene over the weekend. The apartment had great security, CCTV monitoring, and faced south with low management fees, just as Hyene had described. It was within Ji-won's budget, and she could move in right away. Overjoyed, she asked if they could sign the contract immediately. On the way to the real estate office, Ji-won asked Hyene to keep her move a secret from everyone at the company. Curious, she also asked how Hyene had found such a great place. Hyene explained that she had studied at a university nearby, which led to another surprise. Ji-won had graduated from the same university as Hyene's brother. Ji-won was taken aback. She had never met him or even seen him on campus. Later that evening, at Ji-won's old apartment, Parkman Hwan arrived, fuming. He rang the doorbell repeatedly, but no one answered. It seemed Ji-won wasn't home. Furious, he realized she was ignoring his calls, and now, even after showing up at her place, she was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, he heard a man's voice asking who it was. Parkman Hwan angrily shouted, demanding to know if Ji-won was inside the apartment and who the man was. He began banging on the door, yelling for the person inside to come out. The door swung open and a man stepped out, frowning. "Who the hell are you, and why are you making such a racket at my door in the middle of the night?" Parkman Hwan quickly bowed, realizing he must have the wrong apartment. Apologetically, he asked if the man knew where the girl who used to live there had moved to. With a sneer, the man replied, "Chasing after her like that won't make her run away any less." He scoffed, "I don't know anything," before slamming the door shut. Parkman Juan stood there, shaken and furious that Ji-won had moved without telling him. Recalling that night, he regretted not chasing after her to confront her rude behavior. But then Su-min had shown up, and everything had gone wrong. Frustrated, he pulled out his phone to call Ji-won, but couldn't get through. He left her a message, asking when she moved and saying he'd forgive everything, even her disrespect toward his mother. Meanwhile, Ji-won listened to his voicemail and guessed he must have come looking for her. She thought to herself how lucky she was to have moved earlier than planned. Suddenly, she felt hungry. She hadn't eaten anything the night before, and even during breakfast with Jin-wook that morning, she barely touched her food. With the hectic move, she had forgotten all about dinner. Just then, a message from Jung-hook popped up. He asked if her move went smoothly and if she wanted him to bring over some pork soup. Before she could even reply, the doorbell rang. Ji-won opened the door and was surprised to see Jin-hook standing there, holding a container of pork soup. "I thought you might like this," he said with a warm smile. Ji-won thanked him and invited him inside. Suddenly she heard a soft meow at Jeon-wook's feet. Looking down, she saw an adorable little furball. Thinking it was a stray cat, she crouched down to pet it, only to find it snuggling up to her. "That's my pet," Jin-hook explained. "His name is Pei." Ji-won's face lit up in delight as the cat purred happily in her lap, but then a thought crossed her mind. "Wait, does this mean you live here too?" Jin-hook nodded, smiling. "I'm your neighbor." Ji-won was taken aback. How could this be? She glanced at the open door of the apartment across from hers in disbelief. Suddenly, Ji-won had a realization. Jeon-hook looked a bit flustered and quickly apologized for not giving her a heads up about living nearby. Ji-won had moved here to avoid bothering Parkman-han and his meddling, but the thought of Ji-hook living in the same apartment complex had never crossed her mind. She felt confused. How could the head of her department be her neighbor? Jeon-hook explained that Hyen had previously lived in this apartment, and since he didn't feel comfortable with her living alone outside, he decided to move in. He held out the bag of food towards Ji-won, urging her to eat before it got cold. Ji-won thanked him and then asked if he had already eaten dinner. Jin-hook replied that he had, and he was just about to take Pei, his cat, back to his room. Ji-won, still petting the cat, gave it a gentle scratch on the head. She found Pei incredibly cute. Jeon-hook offered, "If you like, you can play with Pei for a while." Thrilled, Ji-won eagerly invited him to stay for a bit. Jin-hook followed her inside with his cat, realizing just how much joy having a pet could bring into her home. Meaning seemed to return to his life. Ji-won sat down at the dining table, looking at the steaming dishes in front of her. She asked, "Did they really deliver the whole pot and bowls too?" Jin-hook felt a bit guilty as he explained, "This is the trendy new style of food delivery. The dishes are from a very famous restaurant." Ji-won began eating, savoring the delicious food. Jin-hook anxiously asked, "Is it good?" She smiled, saying, "It's really tasty. It reminds me of my hometown. My dad and I used to enjoy flavors like this in Busan." Jin-hook sighed in relief, glad she liked it. He recalled how earlier he had called his little brother, carefully instructing him to bring over the pork soup. The effort seemed worth it, seeing Ji-won happily devour the meal. As he was getting ready to leave, Jin-hook said, "Whenever you want to see Pei, just come over to my place to hang out." Ji-won was overjoyed and promised, "I'll visit often." Jin-hook was taken aback, surprised that she agreed so quickly. He hugged his cat, returning to his apartment, and fed Pei while praising the cat. "You're so clever," he said, petting its head. "You already know I like her, don't you? You must like Ji-won too, right?" Of course Pei liked Ji-won, Jin-hook thought. After all, she was his lifesaver. The next morning, Jae-won and her assistant Jae went to a supermarket to survey customer reactions and check the display of new products. Assistant Jay seemed nervous, mentioning that the project had caused some trouble for her parents. Jaewon reassured her, saying, "After this, you might get promoted and can repay them." As they entered the supermarket, they were both shocked to find that all the products from their company were missing, not just the new ones, everything. Finding this strange, they decided to ask the supermarket staff directly. However, when they introduced themselves as representatives of UNC, the staff became very cold. "How do you dare show your faces here after what happened?" the manager snapped. Shocked by this response, Jaewon and Assistant Jay rushed back to the office. This was no small matter. How could Parkman Han and Sumin have let this happen? As soon as they got back, Assistant Jay immediately called Sumin in to ask what was going on. She confronted her. "Are you still sane? You caused trouble and just ran away without addressing it." Sumin stammered, "What are you talking about?" Assistant Jay reminded her of the incident where Sumin gave a food sample containing peanuts to a customer with a peanut allergy and didn't even apologize or report it. Sumin tried to explain, but Assistant Jay cut her off, saying, "During the market survey for the new product, you caused a major issue and didn't even report it." Sumin panicked, trying to shift the blame onto Jiwon. She sobbed uncontrollably, claiming her actions were driven by concern for Jiwon. Sumin admitted she hadn't reported the allergic reaction because Jiwon didn't give her a heads up. "I had no idea," Sumin cried, looking at Jiwon. "I was afraid she'd get into trouble." Jimhook turned to Jiwon and asked, "Is what Sumin saying true?" Jiwon felt the weight of doubt and the disdainful glances from everyone in the room. Meanwhile, Sumin was being comforted and surrounded by sympathy. But Jiwon had grown used to this. It no longer hurt her as much. She simply replied, "I don't really remember." At that moment, Sumin continued playing the role of the supportive friend, telling Hook, "If the company decides to impose any penalties, it should only be on me." Jin-hook asked Ji-won to really think about it. "Are you sure you don't remember clearly?" Ji-won bowed her head. "It's been a while, so I don't recall all the details," she admitted. "Maybe we should check the CCTV footage from that day." Upon hearing that, Sumin's face turned pale. Suddenly, Ji-won felt a sharp pang of guilt. If that was the case, wouldn't everyone know the blame squarely fell on her? Trying to stay composed, Ji-won handed out a USB to everyone, explaining that it contained the CCTV footage from the day in question. Since the project was so important, she had made sure to keep a copy of the footage on her. "Everyone take a look," Ji-won said. "I've already given Sumin a detailed heads-up on the key points we needed to focus on. I stressed to her just how important this was." Sumin, now feeling the pressure, apologized to the group, claiming, "I'm sorry. It must be because my memory's just so bad that I forgot." Jong-hook frowned and asked, "But why didn't both Sumin and Park Mang-wan report the incident to the company?" Feeling cornered, Sumin thought fast. She needed to escape this situation. "Well, Parkman, one advised me to keep it under wraps," she said, eyes darting around. "He told me that as long as we both stayed quiet, no one would ever find out." Parkman-hwan was taken aback. "What are you talking about?" he asked, fury building inside him. He could hardly believe Sumin was throwing him under the bus like this. He clenched his fists, wanting to lash out, but instead he bowed his head and apologized to the team. "Since Sumin was a new recruit, I decided to handle the situation myself," he explained, struggling to keep his voice steady. Jun-hook, growing increasingly frustrated, ordered Sumin and Parkman-hwan to each write up their individual reports and submit them. Finally, in a desperate attempt to save herself, Sumin tried to shift all the blame onto Parkman-hwan. "You don't know how hard I work to clean up your mess," Parkman-hwan snapped at her. "And this is how you repay me, stabbing me in the back?" Sumin shrugged and coldly replied, "Well, you're just an assistant. All you had to do was write the report. If anything went wrong, I'd lose my chance to become a full-time employee." Parkman-hwan shot back, "After all this, forget about signing a contract. You'll be lucky to keep any position at all." Despite his anger, he assured her, "Don't worry, you won't face any reprimands or punishment. It's not necessary." With that, he walked away, leaving Sumin alone in her thoughts. She seethed inwardly, thinking, If I'm going down, I'll take everyone with me. She pulled out her phone and called the customer who had suffered the allergic reaction. Feigning concern, she asked, "How's your health? Have you recovered? The company wants to send a gift to make up for the mistake." Sumin wasn't about to let the situation spiral out of control. After making the call, she casually focused on her beauty routine, convinced that she had handled everything perfectly. Suddenly, her phone rang. She quickly answered, asking, "Did you receive the gift the company sent?" On the other end, the customer was furious. "You sent me a peanut salad after I almost died from eating peanuts? Are you out of your mind?" Sumin replied nonchalantly, "I thought you'd like free food. Maybe you should try harder to adapt." The man, now absolutely livid, demanded, "Where are you? I want to talk to you in person." Sumin shrugged. "If you want to find me, just come to the company headquarters." The next morning, in the lobby of the company building, Ji-won ran into Assistant Jang and Hye-in. Hye-in asked, "Have you seen Sumin at work today?" Suddenly, they heard a man's voice shouting loudly, demanding to know who the marketing assistant Jang was because he wanted to see her. The security guard tried to stop him, telling him he couldn't act like that here, but the man was insistent. In a fit of rage, he threw all the food he had brought onto the floor. Esther Jung decided to step in. She approached the man and introduced herself. "I'm Assistant Jang," she said calmly. When she looked at the package, she saw that her name was on it. Surprised, she told Ji-won, "I never sent a package like this. Someone must have impersonated me." Ji-won immediately suspected Sumin was behind the prank. Assistant Jang told Ji-won and Heen to stay out of it, insisting she would handle the situation. However, the man, still furious, shouted, "You told me to come here, and now you're treating me like a thug." He raised his hand as if he was about to strike Assistant Jang. Ji-won, stunned, suddenly recalled a similar moment in her past when Parkman Hanan had tried to do the same to her. With a second chance at life, she couldn't just stand by and let this happen again. She rushed forward and stood in front of Assistant Jang, urging the man to calm down. "Who are you?" the man demanded. Ji-won bowed and apologized, explaining, "The person who sent that package was definitely not Assistant Jang, but someone else. I promise we'll find the person who spoke to you on the phone, and they will personally apologize. We will also come up with a solution to compensate you." The man, though still angry, seemed to soften slightly. He glared at Ji-won and asked, "Are you just talking nonsense? Are you the one responsible for this?" Just then, Jin-hook arrived. He told Ji-won, "You don't need to handle this alone." Introducing himself to the man, Jin-hook said, "I'm the head of the marketing department. If you have an issue, you can talk to me." He suggested they move to a more comfortable place to discuss the situation and escorted the man away. Before leaving, Jin-hook told Ji-won, "Get in touch with Sumin. We need to address this." Ji-won hesitated. "She probably won't come to the office anymore," she said, "but I'll find a way to make her show up." Unbeknownst to them, the chairman had been watching the whole scene unfold. He turned to his secretary and asked, "Why did Jin-hook only step in at the last minute when Assistant Jang and Ji-won were already handling the situation?" The chairman's secretary replied, "We should move on. There are more important matters to address." Meanwhile, Sumin was at a beauty salon, getting pampered and thinking everything was going according to her plan. Her phone buzzed on the table, notifying her of a text from her mother asking if she had been fired. The company had been making a fuss at home. Sumin recalled the person she called Mother, who had spent her life just yelling at her. The thought of that person sent shivers down her spine. She stood up, planning to go get her hair washed, determined to live a leisurely life and be a beautiful lady for everyone to see. Suddenly, her father called. It was Inno. She answered, asking what he wanted. Inno said he wanted to meet her to talk about Ji-won and Minnon. Sumin agreed to meet him in the evening, and they arranged to meet at a bar. When Sumin arrived and pushed the door open, she was startled to find Ji-won waiting for her instead of Inho. Ji-won casually remarked that she finally got to meet her. "If it weren't for Inho's phone call, I wouldn't have shown up to meet anyone," she said. Zoomin, clearly exhausted from work, complained that she was only familiar with Jiwon, yet Jiwon was always too busy with others, completely ignoring her. Jiwon didn't want to hear this again and told Zoomin to stop saying such things. "Now is not the time to be so relaxed," she said sternly. Jiwon handed Zoomin her termination notice, explaining that the reason was for taking leave without permission and being absent without notice. She also added that the paperwork would soon be in her hands. "Did you send a product containing peanuts to the customer?" Jiwon asked. Zoomin shook her head repeatedly, denying it. "There's no reason for me to do that," she said. Jiwon coldly replied, "If it wasn't you, then you're lucky. That customer has contacted a lawyer. If the company's legal department gets involved, they will submit your call history to the investigators as evidence." Hearing this, Zoomin began to feel genuinely anxious. She finally admitted, "I did send a package, but I removed the products containing peanuts and sent it under Assistant Yan's name. But due to a mistake, I accidentally sent the wrong items, and the customer has been terrifyingly persistent in calling. I was so scared that I acted that way." Jiwon held Zoomin's hand tightly, apologizing. "If I had cared about you more, perhaps this wouldn't have happened. I want us to resolve this together." She suggested that the next day, Zoomin should accompany her to the hospital to apologize to the customer. "If it was just a mistake, I'll help you," Jiwon added. The next morning, Zoomin went with Jiwon to the hospital where the customer was being treated. Jiwon held Zoomin's hand tightly and insisted, "You need to kneel and beg the customer for forgiveness." Zoomin asked Jiwon what she was doing. Gritting her teeth, she reluctantly apologized to the customer, even though she didn't want to. The customer didn't accept it, asking, "Is this really the attitude of someone who regrets their actions?" Zoomin shouted, "I don't even remember what I said on the phone. He raised his voice at me first. Why should I be the only one to apologize?" Jiwon yelled at Zoomin to stop talking. Just then, department heads Jong-hook and Parkman walked in. Zoomin looked at Parkman, hoping for help, but he ignored her. Jong-hook asked the customer if he felt any better, but the man was still furious. Zoomin sobbed, saying she truly knew she was in the wrong and hoping he would forgive her. She added that being pregnant had made her emotions uncontrollable, which was why she said such things. Everyone in the room turned their attention to her. Jiwon was equally shocked. "She's pregnant?" she murmured. Parkman, meanwhile, went up to the rooftop to meet Jiwon to clarify everything. He took out his phone and called Jiwon, asking if she could talk for a moment. "I'm off today and just want to rest," Jiwon replied, her tone flat. She asked, "Are you going to discuss the baby in Zoomin's belly, or the fact that you two are planning to get married?" Jiwon made it clear, "Whether the baby is yours or not doesn't concern me. I hope we can just be colleagues in the future. Please don't call me again." Parkman hesitated, wanting to ask her to keep this a secret from the company staff. "If everyone in the company finds out, it will be very troublesome for you," he said. Jiwon replied, "I don't care about any rumors. I just don't want things to be so ambiguous." With that, she hung up the phone. It became clear to her that he was still only thinking about his own reputation. She couldn't understand how she ever dated such a selfish person. "What fiancé?" she thought. "He's just someone who used to be my fiancé." Meanwhile, Parkman was also in a tangled mess. He continued calling Jiwon, but she didn't pick up. Frustrated, he then called Zoomin, shouting at her, demanding to know what she had said to Jiwon. On the other end of the line, his mother's voice rang out, scolding him for raising his voice at the woman carrying his child. She told him to hurry home and prepare for their wedding. She also instructed Zoomin to stay with them while she was pregnant, so they couldn't leave her alone. Zoomin was secretly thrilled. Of course, she couldn't let Parkman abandon her now. Earlier at the hospital, Jiwon had pulled Zoomin into the stairwell and asked how she could use the excuse of being pregnant to justify everything she had done. She questioned who the father of the baby in Zoomin's belly was. Zoomin, putting on a pained expression, said she would reveal the truth, but hoped Jiwon wouldn't get angry. Tears streamed down her face as she confessed that the child was Parkman Hanan's. She asked Jiwon if she could forgive her, since they were best friends. Upon hearing this, Jiwon was stunned, unable to believe what was happening. She stormed out, leaving Sumin still apologizing profusely. Even after Jiwon left, Sumin continued to pretend to cry pitifully, thinking about Jiwon's shocked and speechless face. It made her burst into laughter. Wasn't Jiwon just acting all high and mighty, claiming she could handle everything on her own? In the end, she couldn't even utter a word to her anymore. Sumin clenched her fists, reveling in the sight of Jiwon sobbing alone, feeling elated that she had taken everything from her. At Parkman-won's house, Sumin asked his mother why she kept feeding her grilled meat, feeling that it was a bit wasteful. The mother cheerfully replied, saying that elders believe eating lots of meat helps you have a son. She also mentioned that it was the first time in her life she had tasted such delicious soybean paste soup and promised to teach Sumin how to cook it for Munan in the future. At that moment, Sumin felt like they were truly a family and she could finally have a happy life. She thanked her, saying she had enjoyed the meal very much. Parkman Hanan's mother continued to bring her carp soup, saying it was very good for having a son. Sumin looked at the smelly liquid covering her mouth and hesitated. She told the mother she couldn't drink it, but the mother insisted that it was precious and she had to finish it. Hearing this, Sumin closed her eyes, pinched her nose, and downed the entire bag of the concoction. The mother smiled and said that when she gave birth, she didn't get to drink such nourishing things, so she had to make sure Sumin finished it all. Just then, a delivery person called for Parkman Hanan's mother. The mother mentioned the wedding invitations, saying they were absolutely beautiful, and asked Sumin to help fold them. Sumin was surprised. Clearly she hadn't placed any orders, but the mother explained that as soon as she heard the news of Sumin's pregnancy, she immediately made arrangements. She asked if Sumin thought they were beautiful. Sumin gritted her teeth in anger. Why should the wedding invitations be according to her wishes? She didn't like this tacky invitation at all. Her anger only grew when the mother said she had already chosen several wedding dresses for her. I was worried you'd be tired, so I prepared everything in advance, she said. How lucky you are to have such a good mother-in-law. Sumin panicked, saying she wanted the two of them to choose the wedding dress together. The mother replied that her son had been working very hard, so why should he have to go with her? If you insist on doing things your way, then there's no need for a wedding at all, she added. Also, I want you to get rid of those awful red fake nails. They aren't good for the baby. Late that night, Park Man-hwan finally returned home from work. He walked into the room, tired, and looked at Sumin, who was lying on the bed reading a book. Sumin asked if he was still mad at her. Park Man-hwan couldn't understand. After all, she was quite capable. He wondered what she had said to make his father give her money to buy a house. Park Man-hwan then came up with a plan. He would use that money to fix the mess from the recent failed vote. Thinking this way, he said that since everything had happened unexpectedly, he didn't know how to handle it. Sumin asked him who he liked more, her or Jiwon. He immediately replied that of course he liked his wife the most. Sumin felt satisfied. She was about to become the owner of this house.